Okay, we've come down from Main Street, moving south. We've gone through Chinatown. We've continued down to what's really the end of the central core of the town. A lot of miners live way out in cabins and things scattered around, or even on the other side of White Reef over here. There's some very elaborate stone foundations with fireplaces in them. But the central core of the town was here, and this was the only successful religious group in Silver Reef. As I mentioned before, Mormons did send missionaries in, but that didn't work. People who are Gentiles didn't want anything to do with Mormonism. But also the Protestant denominations here, and there were people who were Lutherans or Baptists or Methodists, but they were never enough of them or organized enough to do what the Catholics did. And the Catholics were able to do it, of course, because almost all the Irish miners were devout Roman Catholics. So the Catholic Church established a church here. Father Scanlon, who later becomes the Archbishop of Utah, he assigns a number of priests, there's at least 4 of them, who serve Silver Reef. And then he brings Sisters of the Holy Cross from South Bend, Indiana, which is right across from Notre Dame, which is still there, by the way. We went to their archives. They came in, helped to run the church, but they also ran a day school. Church, I think, was named for St. John, and this is the foundation of the church. The day school was named St. Mary's Day School, and it was open to Catholics and non-Catholics. And there is one photograph showing the church and showing some of the nuns in their habits standing out in front of the church. And I do have correspondence from the nuns where they're writing back to their Father Superior back in South Bend about their experiences here. So they ran this church, they ran, the priest ran the church, of course, they ran the day school, and then they built a hospital, which is in this area someplace right around here, and the miners would pay like a fee, so much a week, like $1 or something, and then if they got sick, they could come to the hospital and be taken care of. And there's one point where they described the hospital, how many miners were there, and they had pulmonary problems and other things. They stay here from the 1870s up till about 1884, when the church and school and things closed down, because the town's beginning to die already by 1884, 85. And so by 1890, they're all gone and have pulled out and gone elsewhere, been assigned elsewhere. And as the town died, we should point out that not only were a lot of things recycled, entire buildings were picked up and taken away. 2 or 3 buildings were taken, including some of the church buildings up here. I think the hospital building was taken down to Leeds and used as like an assembly hall, I think maybe a school. And then another building was taken down, that one burned down later. But there's one was taken down that is now the town hall in Leeds, and that still exists. And a few weeks ago, we visited a site, a home in Santa Clara, which is down near St. George, and they have a building, one of the people there have a building in their backyard that's from Silver Reef, and they have memory of how it was moved down by wagon and put into their backyard. So not only were the materials recycled, in some cases entire buildings were recycled. There is a building in St. George, right on St. George Boulevard, right in the center of the town, and it's right downtown at the center. And if you look at it, you see it's a false fronted building. It was one of the saloons. It was not the Elkhorn Saloon, but it was one of the saloons, unidentified, that was moved down. There's now the news building in that complex of buildings right off of Main Street on St. George Boulevard. But again, school, the hospital, and the church were all closed, certainly by 1885, and by the early 1890s, the whole town was dead and gone. The church is way down here, by the way, almost certainly because they want to get it away from the saloons and all the business activities and everything going on there. And it was well supported. Probably George Miller, or possibly George Miller and Margaret Grams may have been Catholic. A lot of the Irish miners, of course, were Roman Catholic. And so that's sort of the end of our tour of Silver Reef. And are there any questions?
I'm going to go into why the town failed.
Sometimes it's stated that the town failed because of the strike, the union strike, labor strike in 1881. And it is true that was very serious. The miners were being paid $4 a day, which is the same as what they're being paid on the Comstock. But the Comstock mines are much deeper and extremely hot and filled with steam and everything. And as the price of silver fluctuated and went down internationally on the market, because this is very low-grade ore, the mining corporations led by the Stormont wanted to lower the wage from $4 to $3.50. And all the other corporations, except for the Christie Mining Company, joined them in doing this. And the miners didn't like that one bit, because they said, look, we got to buy all of our food, we have to buy all of our clothing. It's all brought from outside. And I should mention one of the things we found, which I'm wearing, we found little rivets. They said Levi Strauss on them. and that's because he invented that in the gold rush. He was a German merchant who came over, and he invented Levi's, and we still have them today. I also have a button from John Wanamaker's Working Clothing in Philadelphia, for instance. They had to buy all this stuff that was brought from outside. So they had a miners' union dominated by the Irish miners. They struck. They went to the manager of the Stormont, Colonel Allen, and they said, "You've got exactly 1 hour to get out of town, or else." So he had to jump out in a buckboard and grab a few things and leave. What he did is he went into St. George, got Augustus Hardy, the sheriff, got a court order from Beaver. They formed a posse, came back in and seized the mine union's leadership and threw them in the Silver Reef Jail, which was back there where we were earlier on the east side of Main Street, and then moved them off to St. George. That tended to break up the union, and some of the miners started leaving. But that's not what destroyed Silver Reef. Silver Reef was destroyed by the price of silver on the global market, which then was lowering, so it became less economical to mine. And also, as they got deeper, a lot of silver was up near the surface. They got deeper, they started running out of silver, or they hit water, and water started flooding the mines, so you had to pump all the water out. All these things became much, much more expensive, and finally they simply failed to produce enough profit, so the corporation started to close down. About $8 to $9 million in silver came out of Silver Reef, mostly in the 19th century. There's still Silver Reef, still silver here, by the way. It's not economical to mine. And when we were doing the early part of this film, we were checking on something I had found in the Silver Reef miner. They looked in the museum up there. And the Wells Fargo building was started in 1877, finished in 1878. And they originally planned to make it 3 stories high. However, some of the sandstone that you saw so beautifully cut the surface came from Tecumseh Hill, so it probably has silver in it because it's coming from the area where the silver is coming from. So there's little amounts of silver all over the place here, but it's just not economical. The same way in the 1950s they tried to mine uranium, and they did find uranium, but again, not in quantities enough to make that economical. So mining has been several attempts. Coming up to when we arrived here, there was the 5M mining group trying to develop things. It's never come back online though because of the price of silver internationally, and that's what finished off Silver Reef.
Do you want to talk about what else you have planned for the area?
We're finished doing archaeology, field archaeology. We're going to be working on the materials, most of which we brought back, but we're also working on all this archival research we've done. We have just hundreds and hundreds of copied sources. We have to start correlating all those. So for instance, in 1880, as I mentioned, there's 1,000 people in Silver Reef. But by looking at legal documents, the census tract, and by looking at and that the 8,000 people is from the census tract. By looking at things like hotel arrivals in Salt Lake, we don't have the guest book for the Harrison House. It's gone. No one can find it, which would be a wonderful thing. But we do have what are called hotel arrivals printed in the Tribune and the Herald, which they would print not for the small boarding houses or smaller hotels, but the big hotels in Salt Lake would print who had arrived that week as a guest. And the way you'd sign yourself, you'd sign like Robert Schuyler, Philadelphia. And so what we did is go through and take out everyone who signed Silver Reef. And that, we've increased that in other documents. We've increased the number from 1,000 to 4,000 people connected with Silver Reef. And you can see some famous people arriving not here. There's a newspaper story that got it wrong, but they didn't come down here. But you can see Thomas Moran arriving at one of the hotels. He's a very famous 19th century landscape artist. He painted the headwaters of the Rio Virgin, which is now Zion National Park. And you can see Buffalo Bill, William Cody. And so most people would put like Robert Schuyler, Philadelphia, or James Lowder, Silver Reef. He puts down William Cody, which is his actual name, comma, the world, and so showing what he thought of himself. So they are a very important source. So are all the legal records. So are the Salt Lake Tribune and Herald. So are documents from the Roman Catholic Church. You put all those together. Now we have to synthesize all that information and correlate it with the archaeology. So I'm going to be coming back each May, and we're going to be working with here the Silver Reef Museum Group, Silver Reef Foundation, and working on the artifacts and things and thinking about exhibits and stuff for the future.
Then, do you want to